Okay, so this is I watched the entire, not watched, I listened to the entire 51 minutes of bullshit by Saki and some other moron, I forget his name. And I went through the most important parts that you guys should know about, because this is really scary. As an OG North American ape said, like, this is really scary because these young people don't watch Rachel Maddow. They don't watch CNN, MSNBC. Trust me, they go on TikTok 24/7. They get their news in 1-minute bites from a lot of these TikTok influencers who decide, you know, like they're once in a while, even though they're doing TikTok dances, that they're going to have some sort of opinion on this. And their opinion comes from the mainstream. Their opinion does not come from watching independent media. And if it is independent media, it's not really independent. It is like Bosch or some other moron on Twitch. So it's really bad out there. They're trying to get Gen Z to fall in line, and Gen Z is easy because they don't have the pre 9/11 thing. They were, most of them were born after 9/11, and or they were extremely young when that happened. So they haven't seen this propaganda at work for very long. You can find parallels to that in Nicaragua when it came to the Sandinista Revolution, when a lot of people, the younger people, it was harder to convince them about who the Sandinistas were and like what happened and who the Contras were and all of that, because they weren't alive during that time. So that kind of thing is a danger where we have to push back in some ways and find ways to gear towards younger people to get them to understand that they're being weaponized and manipulated. And you're going to see how bad it is, because it's really bad.
Fee wanted to start a TikTok a long time ago, pay a lot of attention to. We just were too many things we have to do. But she had the idea because she wanted to reach younger people a long time ago. Start that TikTok, correct, and make some videos to really kind of get some people into the door.
Yeah, but it's the other thing is that TikTok also, it bans things that they're calling misinformation.
Exactly.
So even if I were to do that, it would only be a limited time before I got banned. And some of the stuff we covered in the Convo Couch TikTok was already immediately banned. So okay, I don't know what that is. So okay, so this
you didn't put that there?
No. So the Biden White House, of course, gave 30 TikTok influencers a briefing on the Russia-Ukraine war, and by briefing, it was an indoctrination. And this is really small.
Let me make it bigger.
That's what she said.
Go ahead. Stop.
Dozens of TikTok influencers were given a White House briefing on Russia-Ukraine Thursday. The WAPO reported, and we're going to go over what the WAPO said. And Taylor Lorenz was the journalist who had the audio recording, and we're going to listen to that. And yeah, so let's go ahead and go through some of what the direct Washington Post said. So the TikTok videos offered some of the first glimpses of the Russian invasion. Since then, the platform has been primary outlet for spreading news to the masses abroad. Ukrainian citizens hiding in bomb shelters or fleeing their homes have shared their stories to the platform, while dangerous misinformation and Russian propaganda have also spread. And TikTok stars, many with millions of followers, have increasingly sought to make sense of the crises for their audiences. So the White House has been closely watching this. And of course, they want to take control of the most influential names. And so they have there's this organization called Gen Z for Change, which by the name, you can already tell it's going to be fucking bullshit. A nonprofit advocacy group that helps identify top content creators on the platform to orchestrate a briefing aimed at answering questions about the conflict and the United States' role in it. Victoria Hammett, Deputy Executive Director of Gen Z for Change, contacted dozens with invitations via email and gathered potential questions for the Biden administration. So by gathered potential questions, that means that they had to look at their questions and sort of and lead them on to where to go. And you'll hear that when they ask the questions, you know that those questions were pre-approved. You can just tell. And so there's just they kind of all the TikTokers kind of focus on whatever their audiences would be. And after the calls, several influencers said they felt more empowered to debunk misinformation and communicate effectively about the crisis. TikTok has been overrun with false and misleading news since the war broke out. And on Thursday, the company said it finally would begin labeling state-controlled media on its platform. So there you go. And that's a Chinese app.
The Chinese, fam, I was going to say. It's China's fault.
So it's interesting. It's a Chinese app, but remember the United States gained their own sort of control over it because they were going to ban it. And that whole thing happened, if you guys recall. So Biden has done this before. The administration worked with dozens of top TikTok stars last year to encourage vaccination. So again, this isn't anything new. They've been doing this because they see that these people have millions of followers and they want to take advantage of that. He also educated people on the infrastructure plan and on the child care component of his Build Back Better, aka the Great Reset initiative. And yeah, he sat for interviews with 2 parents. And so I wanted to kind of point out that the son of Aaron Parnas, the son of Lev Parnas, who was a Ukrainian-born American businessman and former associate of Giuliani, who assisted Trump's plan to pressure Ukraine to investigate Trump's rivals, was on the call. So he's the son, and he was his father was convicted in October of campaign finance charges and recently pled guilty to conspiracy. So his son, Aaron Parnas, emerged as a powerful TikTok influencer, and he kept providing news about Ukraine, saying he has family in Ukraine, and kept talking about everything that's been happening. And he said, they say he has been posting a video breaking down news about the war every 45 minutes from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And how does he do that? That means he has some sort of fucking army working with him, because there's no way. How are you going to post videos every 45 minutes from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. without having help? So there's like an operation there behind that too. And he said he was getting his information directly from reputable sources in the country, his family members, local Ukrainian journalists, and Ukrainian television. And he said, I love my father, but I am not my father. And he's one of the people that when he asks the question, it's very much like, it's just so fucking ridiculous. It is so like complete. It's such a lie. It's just everything he does. So now that I went over all that, let's go ahead and start listening. Anything to say?
Nope. Let's just listen, because I'm very interested to hear this shit, because you listened to it. I haven't. So let's check it out.
Slowly but consistently on the same 3
Can't even hear it.
That they initially launched the invasion on. From the north, headed towards Kyiv, from the east around Kharkiv, and from the south, mostly centered now around Mariupol, where they've launched these devastating attacks on civilians.
Got our mics?
On all 3 fronts, the Russian attack has moved much more slowly than we believe they expected, much more slowly than people in the West expected. We think that's for a few reasons. Number one, the Ukrainians have fought incredibly hard, incredibly bravely. The military, supported by regular civilians who have joined the fight. The Ukrainians have been better armed than I think the Russians expected, and have been more nimble in launching attacks, especially on kind of big lumbering Russian convoys of tanks and other armored equipment. And number two, the Russians have had their own difficulties, even apart from what the Ukrainians have done to them. I think their military hardware has not functioned as well as people expected of the supposedly great Russian war machine. They've had logistical and mechanical difficulties, and then they've really had significant morale difficulties. We continue to see reports of Russian soldiers who've not following orders, deserting in some cases, and a feeling among some in the Russian army that they were deceived. They thought they were on a training exercise, and they're now in a war against their neighbors, and they have no idea what they're fighting for. So what does that all mean? Where we're seeing the Russians turn their attacks is, since their initial plan to kind of take over the country very quickly has failed, they're now turning this kind of war of attrition, which is where you see them launching these really brutal attacks on civilians, bombing hospitals, maternity wards, cutting civilians off from food and water, in some cases electricity, to try to really put pressure on the Ukrainian population.
Okay, so this was just an introductory where he's like introducing them, like, what's going on with Russia. They're not as strong as they said they were going to be. They've been like, the morale is low. Now they're going around bombing schools and hospitals. He just, the usual narrative spin, right? But while he's saying that, what's happening in reality is that the Ukrainian people that enlisted thinking that it was Call of Duty, whatever Call of Duty they're on, I don't know, I'll have to call Johnny and see what Call of Duty they're on, but like they're like, wait a minute, we didn't think that enlisting in war was going to mean war. Here is a thread from Reddit where they're having this discussion, and Max posted this on Twitter, and they said, this person says, you weren't expecting missiles at war. And this person says, no, just not at the base at that particular time. Shit surprised all of us, including the Ukrainians. You guys are all idiots then. Of course they try to attack a training base. I mean, that's all that they've been attacking, the military areas. And the guy says, thanks, man. The cannon fodder term is what's coming out of a lot of volunteers' mouths. That's why I mentioned it. There was a real shift in people's expectations of being utilized as a unit with operational capabilities versus the reality of basically being bodies in front of the advancing Russians. What did you think would happen? They're using you for a narrative. Okay. Like that was always the thing. And then the person says, yes, morale is pretty bad. I mean, the whole damn base was destroyed. And now the Legion is just kind of shoving guys with little training to the front. Gee, that's surprising. Not really. Not at all. They make you sign a contract that states you'll serve until the end of conflict. But if you want to leave an hour later, they totally respect that. So these people are scared out of their mind. And this is the Ukrainian international army that's been recruited by, NATO, all these people coming in from Brazil, from all these countries. Now, this is a good account to follow. It's called Ukraine Maps. They've been putting out a lot of information. And they said newly arrived foreign fighters are now massively trying to flee to Poland. 4 Brazilian foreign fighters who survived the attack already back in Poland. These are military veterans from Brazil. So there they are. And Wyatt, basically, you can kind of understand I can kind of understand what they say in this video, and I verified it. But basically what they're saying is, what this guy says is there were soldiers from all over the world, even from the special forces of different countries. The missiles ended everything. The entire Ukrainian Foreign Legion was exterminated. Okay, so reportedly, 118 people of these mercenaries, whatever, were killed in a Russian strike. And according to the guy in the Reddit, they're putting untrained people who just wanted to gung ho and come in and play this video game in real life and they're pushing them to the front. And so while the State Department is indoctrinating Gen Z with, Russian morale is bad, they don't have all the weapons they thought they could, blah, 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 this is taking them a lot longer, the reality is much different. And by the way, if Russia wanted to take over Ukraine, they would have done it a long time ago. They could have done it very, very quickly, much more. Like, they obviously don't want to do that. So yeah,
war management narratives. It's just interesting. It's so fun. I mean, it's not fun. It's sad when you think about it, but that's the whole problem right now with the censorship, with them cutting everything, is they don't want you to know the truth. They want you to hear their story. And America and the West, they got a really kind of funny, fucking sarcastic, dark sense of fucking humor sometimes. I think the way they kind of portray things, really dark shit, you know what I'm saying? And the way they rah cheer people on. It's always people who are never gonna have to fight a war themselves, or they're people who kind of ordered wars and lost them themselves. That's who's pushing all these narratives that are being debunked right in front of you in this time right now. So
let's go to slide 40 because they're not going to understand the video anyway. But this is from, once again, PL News, and he did this video coverage, right? And I'm just going to read what was actually happening, because again, we're getting the whole idea that Putin is bombing hospital, Putin is bombing the schools. And so this Ukrainian lady said, what do you want from me? Can you tell me about what happened here? What happened? Ukraine happened. Do you understand it? The bastards left. They smashed and plundered everything. So again, this is another account of another person in Ukraine saying it's the Ukrainians themselves destroying a lot of this. And then she continues. She says the Ukrainian army left and shoots. When the Ukrainian troops retreated, they smashed everything. They broke my door, so I have to sleep with the open door. Do you understand it? And it is cold. The radiators are cold. There is no gas, no electricity, no water, no heat. This is cold. It's cold right now up there. And thankfully, they're getting out of winter into spring, but it's still cold. It's not like spring is here. Like it's different. It's still going to be like in the 40s and stuff, in the 30s sometimes. And again, they're also highly dependent on the gas from Russia. So this is screwing a lot of these people. And then she continues, how to live. I'm sitting like this for 16 days. This is how we live. Where are those Donetsk People's Republic guys? Why don't they fix it? How long can we wait for them? The Red Cross was coming, but where is it? So they're even mad at the Donetsk people. Like, we want you to help us. Like, where are you? And so this is all that's happening. It's a very gray situation here. And the people that get screwed are these people right now.
The citizens that live there, at the end of the day.
So now we're just going to go through a blitzkrieg, no pun intended, of this, where they're just giving you State Department talking points, and you guys are going to know them because you watch the show. But we're going to, of course, debunk it every single time. So at 11:39 hours, let's hit it. They're saying Putin isn't achieving his goals.
Yeah.
And no longer achieve its long-term objectives here. President Biden said 2 days ago that Ukraine will never be a victory for Putin. And what he meant by that is, look, Putin can win short-term tactical objectives. He has a bigger military on the ground than the Ukrainians do. But he has so turned the population against him. The Ukrainians, if they ever had any chance of supporting a Russian occupation, which is was not ever in the cards anyway, now have been so brutalized by the Russian attacks that they are never going to stand for any kind of long-term occupation. They're never going to stand for a public government. So what Putin has hoped to achieve in Ukraine, he's not going to be able to. Doesn't mean there aren't a lot of really long, ugly days ahead of us. There certainly are. But that ultimately his objectives will be fulfilled. So what does the United States do to make that happen? Two things. One, give as much support as we can to the Ukrainians. Some of that takes the form of military support, security assistance. We've talked a lot about that. We've committed $1 billion in the past year, $250 million in just the last week or so that we've surged in to help the Ukrainian army, and there's more on the way. Economic assistance to the Ukrainian government, and also really critically now humanitarian assistance. We're sending into Ukraine food, water, medical supplies, things that people really need to kind of just sustain daily life. The second part of that is holding Russia accountable, specifically holding Putin accountable. And we've tried to do that by assembling this coalition in the West to impose crippling economic sanctions on the Russian economy, to target Putin himself and those closest to him, and to really kind of degrade Russia's ability to finance this war and its ability to project power.
Okay. So in case you missed that, they're basically indoctrinating these kids to be okay with sanctions. So this is how we help Ukrainians. We hold Putin accountable. We give, of course, humanitarian aid, blah, blah, blah. But we also give these sanctions. We show Putin who's boss. I mean, this is the indoctrination happening. And the reason I get so worked up about this, it's because these people are very young. Most of them are about 18 years old. They don't know anything. I mean, at 18 years old, I didn't know shit. And a lot of these people are, ahead of their time in certain terms. But some younger people like Glory, that she's Gen Z, and this is what. There's no excuse. Just because they're young doesn't mean that they can't learn and that they can't do well. Glory completely knocks it out of the park with the excuses. They're young, they're dumb. But these people, they don't know what they're being used for. They just think they have a TikTok and they think they're doing the right thing because their whole life it's like, oh, the government. Let's listen to these people that are smarter than we are. They know. They don't know.
No. Yeah.
So they're just being used. And
if you said 18-year-old people don't know, 28-year-old people don't know, 38-year-old people don't know.
I mean,
a lot of people don't know. 48, I don't know shit still this day, you know what I'm saying? But the whole thing is, so I just want to point out really quickly that it says Putin's not obtaining his goals.
Yeah.
And they try to give you this whole story of what he's really trying to do. Like he's Thanos and he's trying to get the last stone in the Ukraine. It's the yellow and the blue stone so he can fucking snap his fingers and all of Europe will live in darkness forever and eventually come to the United States. But his really goals are to demilitarize, denazify, and make neutralize, pretty much what Douglas McGregor said, neutralize. They don't want an anti-Russian government that's going to seek nuclear weapons with Nazis at their border. That's what they want. That is their goal. And to get rid of these biolab weapons too as well. They don't want any of that shit going on at its border. So that's their main thing. He's not taking territory. They're not advancing in. And, there are some people out there like, well, Putin kind of like, even people like, kind of agree with, they're like, Putin thought it was going to be easy that he would be able to take Kiev in a couple of days. he could take Kiev tomorrow if he wants to. Really, to tell you the truth, this is not a geographical location where they can hide in mountains and whatnot. It's, you know, the layout of Ukraine is easy with a military like the Russians to take if they wanted to. They don't want to take it. They want to denazify, demilitarize, and then neutralize the Ukraine. That is what they want, fam.
So let's just play the next clip real quick. It's 1546.
And my question is, some people feel as though the actions that have happened up until now warrant a stronger response from the United States, including the imposition of a no-fly zone. So is there anything Russia can do to Ukraine outside of a direct act of war against the United States or NATO that would rise to the level of the United States proceeding with increased measures, including a no-fly zone or even potentially boots on the ground?
Sorry about that.
So, you know, that is really like that is the question that it's not that it's hard to ask, but it raises the most of like the thing that's really like troubling for everyone that watches this. So it is tough to see these atrocities on the ground every day and not want to do more. And so we always ask ourselves, what more can we do? And that means what more can we do without making this a wider war that brings more countries into the conflict, puts American soldiers at risk. And what the president has decided is the best thing we can do to end this war as quickly as possible without escalating it to a bigger conflict is to support the Ukrainians in all the ways I was talking about. And all the ways I was talking about and others. There's lots of military assistance we're flowing in that we never talk about. But what he's also decided is it is not in the national interest of the United States to send American soldiers in to fight and die in this war, both because it's not in our interest and also it would lead to a wider conflict. And you don't have to, when you think of two nuclear powers engaging in a shooting war, how that could end up. Now,
okay.
Fam, do you remember the USS Liberty, me talking about it, bringing the stories, whatnot? It was a false flag attack where the Israelis tried to sink an American vessel to blame it on the Egyptians during the 12-day war to escalate the war itself. We've said this from the get-go that this could lead into a bad situation. I don't foresee the Russians hitting anything, like Poland, whatnot, or anything like that. But it remains to be seen. But very, very simply, I think that you can see another situation like that, where even though Ned Price, John Sullivan, Jeffrey Pyatt, I don't know which one of these assholes
this is Matt Miller.
Matt Miller. See, they're all
National
the same.
Security Council.
They're interchangeable assholes. Yeah. But what Matt Miller was saying right there, once again, echoing that whole thing that we don't foresee American boots on the ground. Well, hold my fucking beer. How many situations have they said that? World War I, World War II, Vietnam, every single situation. And guess what happens? Boots end up on the ground. That's why we've been saying from the get-go that this is a very dangerous situation that has been playing out on the Russian border for many fucking years. So this whole bullshit right here, what's going on too as well. And it is kind of sick that you're sitting here and you're listening to this and the way they're kind of corrupting and twisting people's fucking minds, young kids' minds, to go out and influence other younger kids to be warmongers, to think it's okay to sanction people for a start, to think it's okay to fucking punish people, by ways of sanctions and military, to justify military weapons and stuff because they have this whole Vladimir Thanos Putin kind of mentality.
They're doing it via, we're helping Ukraine. This is how we help Ukraine. We sanction these Russians, not telling them that sanctions are an active siege war and the people that most suffer are working class Russians, not Putin. And even if you don't like Putin, right? And that's what they're not telling them. And this next one is the worst one. And by the way, the guy who asked the question was basically asking, like, some people want us to act now. He was asked, like, they demand a no-fly zone. So they were basically saying, are you not going to put a no-fly zone? This is what's going on in TikTok, where people are demanding no-fly zones without understanding that a no-fly zone means war. And even Jen Psaki has to repeat that later on. She has to say, well, it means war. Even they know that they can't go to nuclear war toe-to-toe with Russia because it's two nuclear powers, and that is catastrophic.
Yeah, and by the way, too, as well, lawmakers don't even understand what a no-fly zone is. Max Blumenthal had to fucking explain it to a lawmaker over there. That means World War III. The no planes are allowed to fly. A Russian plane flies over, a missile hits it, and now we are into World War III. It's the last thing we want as a no-fly zone. But of course, the Hillary Clinton and her little stands and all these other people will continue to echo it and speak that shit out. It's scary, and it's scary to hear kids going, okay, Why don't we have a no-fly zone now?
Yeah.
Why don't it's ridiculous. They have no clue whatsoever. We've been coddled. We've been too safe over here for too long, fam. And believe you me, we keep up with this behavior. The chickens is coming home to roost. The chickens is coming home to roost.
That's Boss's favorite say, but he's absolutely right. The chickens is coming home to roost. So this next one is one of the worst
piss
ones.
Me off.
Jen Psaki regurgitates the Russiagate conspiracy theory that's been debunked and says Putin has always done this. Russia hacked our elections. Russians have been bad forever. So let's go ahead and hear 2055 us.
If you look back at 2014 and frankly even 2016, when Russia invaded Ukraine, and then in 2016 when they, of course, hacked our election here, we did not do that, right? We did not declassify information, and it was very hard to communicate to the public and to compete with, frankly, the disinformation war that Russia was waging. So that decision on its own to put out all of the steps we were anticipating them taking, whether it was, and we've called them these, false flags or setting up false pretexts, which is basically their effort to justify an invasion and justify all of the military action you've seen them take. Because of these efforts to declassify information, even as we're watching all of this happen, it has been nearly impossible for them to justify to the global community what they're doing. But I'll stop there.
No, I don't have much to add to that other than say, look, this is obviously an issue the U.S., like a lot of Western countries, struggles with how to deal with disinformation. It's particularly hard when you're engaged in a kind of information war with a country like Russia that plays by different rules than we do. Russia, it's part of their strategy to go out and spread disinformation, lies on social media and elsewhere. They have their officials stand up and say things that are not true. And we don't play by those rules. It's not how we operate as a government. And so we made a decision early on in the lead up to this invasion, as Jen said, that the only way we could combat Russian disinformation was to call them on it as early as possible and to flood the information space with what we thought that they were going to.
Who's going to call disinformation on them, fam? Who's going to call out their bullshit and stuff?
Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014. No, false. The United States backed neo-Nazis, armed them, and staged a coup. Russia, Crimea, that was legitimately decided by the people of that region. Yeah. So that's what they use to say Russia invaded Ukraine and they took her. No, that's not what happened.
They annexed it. No, they didn't. People voted to go to Mother Russia because ethnic speaking Russians rather be part of Russia than, you know what I'm saying? Now, but, by all means, don't get me wrong. I don't think Russia was going to stand back and not let that happen. It's a very strategic land, yeah. Crimea. There's a Russian military naval base there too as well. But a lot of the Ukrainians that were part of the Ukrainian naval base over there defected to the Russians anyways over there. And the people overwhelmingly of Crimea voted to say, we're going back to Mother Russia. Screw this freaking this regime change Fugazi government that the West is propping up. Not playing, fam.
And notice how she quickly went to also in 2016 when they hacked our elections, continuing the conspiracy theory that was debunked, I don't know, so many times, right? Where's
you got to go to the vault,
can we label
fam.
that misinformation?
No.
Are they ever going to get in trouble for spewing, literally lying? This is, so you see, and so these kids don't know about fucking Russiagate. Like this is what I'm talking about here. And they're indoctrinating. And then they go, and then Matt Miller goes, Russians have always acted this way. This is part of their how culture. They act. Yeah. They always make things up and they always, act this way. We don't do that. We don't spread misinformation. We don't. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding
If you
me?
poll Republicans and Democrats alike, it's so funny. If you poll them, a bunch of Democrats will still think that the Russians hacked the 2016 election. They didn't hack shit. They didn't do shit. It's ridiculous. It's laughable on its face.
And it's disgusting how they say Russians, this is how they are.
Yeah.
They're trying to cultivate a hatred to the people of Russia, not just like Putin, but to Russians in general.
Yes.
This is how Russians
These
are.
Ruskies
Blah,
are
blah,
bad.
Yeah.
They are bad.
So the next one is it's Putin's fault. Okay,
Here we
everything
go.
is Putin's fault.
His name is Vladimir Thanos Putin.
Right now, and the things that are impacting inflation, whether it's COVID or right now this invasion. I mean, you're part of, in many ways, standing up for a generation that is standing up for the values of the United States, right? Which is the invasion of a foreign dictator into another country and standing up for the rights of the people in that country. And well, it's his actions, President Putin, that is prompting the rise in gas prices. That is why it's happening. And that is what I would say as young people are experiencing this moment and thinking, what does this mean? And what am I a part of? And why is my gas prices going up? It's because of what President Putin is doing, but also because you live in a country where we're rallying the world to stand up against that. And that's part of our values and part of who we are. And as much as no one wants to pay more in gas, we don't. We're going to take steps to lower them. That's what this moment in history will be as well.
How did they say it with a straight face, fam? And we are just American USA Captain America fighting for freedom and around the globe and prosperity. And who's the dude pointing to the Biden picture with the nails? What is that? Is that a TikTok influencer or something?
I think, yeah, it is.
Oh my God.
So Putin, okay, so you guys notice that, right? Like, oh, well, you're a part of a country where you're standing up to evil villain Putin. Why do you guys think there's so many Marvel movies out? Why do you guys think there's so many of that being pushed out? Think about that there. Putin is evil. And, if you're wondering why are my gas prices going up? It's because of Putin. This is what he's doing, but we don't want high gas prices. We're going to try to bring them down, but just know that you're a part of something so great, a part of standing up to Putin and for democracy. Notice how they frame that, like gas prices. Yeah. Let's not focus on that. But it's Putin's fault. And also you're standing up for democracy. This is what you want, right? You guys are, proud TikTokers. You're Americans. Be proud to be an American. It's the same fucking bullshit that the neocons do. It's just using different words and different things catered to more a liberal audience. But it's the same shit, the same patriot sort of jingoistic nationalism that isn't, it's not based on the people. It's based on war. The nationalism based on war.
It's built upon Klaus Schwab's in the World Economic Forum. Fam, it's revisionism is next, right?
Revisionism, entire revisionism.
He actually has been invading Ukraine, been fighting a war in Ukraine since 2014. He took Crimea, but he also has been fighting this war in the Donbass. And the Ukrainians have been fighting, really hard to hold on to the territory, and they've been upping their military capabilities in that time. So we expected that they would be a tougher adversary than the Russians expected. What I don't think anyone expected is the problems with Russian morale. And I think this kind of goes to the limits of disinformation to some extent. So, Putin has been telling the Russian people for years that, Ukraine is a country run by Nazis, despite the fact that, the president of Ukraine is Jewish and has family members who died in the Holocaust. Frankly,
they use all the same fucking talking points. How do they say it with a straight face? That's all I want to know.
Psychopaths.
How do they are crazy.
Sociopaths, dude.
These people are fucking sick to say this shit, whatnot. They have all the fucking talking points, fam. Wow. And Crimea again, right?
Crimea again, yeah. All the talking points that we
Zelensky's Jewish. How can they support neo-Nazis?
I mean,
the neo-Nazis are openly neo-Nazis. They're like, yeah, we're Nazis. They're
proud.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hide it. Okay.
Hail to the heroes is what they're fucking called, whatever.
So
glory to the heroes.
Two quick ones. Why Ukraine? Why Ukraine?
Yeah. It begins with a U.
Here in the United States have become dejected regarding the situation because there's a perceived imbalance of coverage and assistance given to the Ukraine-Russia crisis compared to other occupations, invasions, and attacks throughout the world, some of which have U.S. involvement. So why should these Americans be in support of the United States giving such high levels of attention and direct support against the Russian invasion as they feel there isn't attention on related issues in other places throughout the world or here in the U.S.?
What a good and thoughtful question. I mean, I'll start. I think this is the largest invasion since World War II. So let's start there. I will say that you raise a really important point and question, and I think you and your platforms can help maybe change this a bit. But there are, to your point, a range of conflicts that are happening, frankly, every day, and human rights abuses that are happening and genocides that are happening around the world that don't get and they warrant it, but they don't get the coverage and attention from the U.S. media or from the public as a result that they deserve. And I'll give you a couple of examples you guys may be following, but I would encourage you to shine some light on them. What we've seen happen in Ethiopia in recent months, the abuse of Uyghurs in China. I mean, I could go on of what we're seeing around the world, and I know many of you are following this and tracking this very closely. And I don't think that this conflict should take away from that. We should have our eyes wide open and be educating the public about all of these issues.
So the only person that asks a cognizant question, like, why Ukraine? Why? Like, we're not paying enough attention to other conflicts. He didn't specify what conflicts, but we know we can talk about Libya, Syria, everything.
Palestine. I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. And so then they answer it with bullshit. But then the whole you were cracking up when she said
we all cracked up, which is first of all, I wanted to let you know this is the biggest invasion since World War II. Jen Psaki. No, it's not. You got to be fucking kidding me.
You're right. How do they say this with a straight face?
How do you say this with a straight face? And then she goes over there. Well, there are other things, and I'm dying for you guys to talk about these. Let me think about the ones that are like, imperialist ones that we're not getting enough report on. The Uyghurs, in Ethiopia. Please tell our lie what's going on. In Tigray, they're getting killed over there and stuff like that. Meanwhile, in every single situation, they've been caught lying, especially in Ethiopia and whatnot. What this gentleman was alluding to, I think, was he was trying to talk about Palestine. And there was actually a soccer player. I should have talked about Gloria. There's a soccer player who says it wasn't cool to talk about, politics and sports, but since it's cool, there's also, there's people around the globe who have not been getting attention to what's going on. For Palestine, for one instance, I was like, holy shit. So there is hope there that we have opportunities to talk about, other areas which the media completely ignores because they're in bed for, the corporations who want to go over there, extract these resources. They're in bed with the banks and stuff. But fam, the thing I noticed more than anything is you'll never see any of these people have any counter narrative around them whatsoever, right? They'll never have any pushback. Even the small, tiny, weedy pushback you get in the press rooms and whatnot in the White House is a controlled environment. Yeah. That's why they're lying. If you're so confident of what you have to say, if you're so confident that Putin is some Thanos demon son of a bitch, then stand up and talk about against somebody who thinks differently than you. They never do, fam. They hide, and that's that. They think you're dumb. They think if they can say a bunch of smart, sophisticated things with nobody to push back against the narrative, you're going to buy it. And guess what? You are buying it. Not you out there, the people we know. So that's why we have a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen, in getting the truth out. Not these TikTokers who are being groomed.
They're being groomed. And and out of all the questions, that was the only question that even faced some sort of like criticism to them. And it was obviously they allowed it. But they had an answer for it that was complete riddled in bullshit. And the guy made a TikTok after and said, kind of a little bit of criticism, said, they still could have done something. They could still control what they're talking about. He gave some pushback about what he was told, but that's one person out of all the fucking 30 people that they interviewed. I mean, it just goes to show you. And the very last one is the U.S. response to Russia using chemical weapons.
Oh, it's a goodie, an oldie but a goodie. It still works.
Russia has been conveying or telling the world that the United States has a biological and chemical weapons program and that the Ukrainians do. Both false and inaccurate component pieces of information, which we wanted to swap back swiftly yesterday. What is also true, as Sharon, I think, knows, but for everybody, is that Russia has a chemical and biological weapons program. They have used chemical weapons in the past. Against people in their own country, against people in NATO countries. And so they have that capacity and capability.
I'm sorry, Pasta, I must be dumb, but when did that happen? When did Russia have, when did this happen?
Fam, smart people out there have said I like when they do that. Smart people have that's what something Kamala Harris has said. Smart people out there have said, she does that.
Ukraine is a small country next to a larger country. And what was I saying?
Smart people know that Putin, you want to talk about Putin? He has chemical weapons. Putin has chemical weapons. He's used them. This is a known thing, fam.
It's just
known. Putin. It's known.
It's like Game of Thrones. It is known. It is known. No. What are you talking about? Like, what the fuck?
Well, I think this next part you have is really good because it explains when there's this false narrative put out there, when it can be debunked, when it can be shown, and this is something they were trying to get ahead of, and that's why they're cutting RT from YouTube now too as well, because information like this gets debunked.
And all the accounts that are on Twitter, like ASM. Okay, so this is from Victor Victop, the Telegram. Fake. Vladimir Zelensky on Instagram called Russia's strike on the Mariupol maternity hospital atrocity and said that children and their mothers and doctors are under the rubble. Truth. The maternity hospital has not worked since the beginning of Russia's special operation in Ukraine. This is backed by multiple Russian and Ukrainian media, actually more Ukrainian than Russian, that have been saying the same thing. The doctors were dispersed by militants of the Azov Nationalist Battalion. On March 8th, in an interview with Lenta.ru, and you guys can go directly to that, and translate it, the son of one of the employers of the maternity hospital said that in the last days of February, people in uniform came to the maternity hospital where his mother works. The military dispersed the maternity hospital staff and set up firing points in the building. His words are confirmed by footage published by Ukrainian Telegram channels from inside the maternity hospital after the shelling. Destroyed furniture and broken glass are visible, but there are no bodies of the dead. If there were women and children inside, then the cruel footage would certainly have spread all over the world. The Azov militants set up their firing positions in schools and maternity hospitals, as well as the roofs of these buildings. And then, and I think this is the same. Yeah, this is the same, blah, 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 blah. The roofs of the residential building. This is recorded in the photo and video. And so this is from the ASB military news that was banned on Twitter. Mm-hmm. They said Russia, this is according to, I think, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the nature of damage to the hospital car mislead can mislead the mass audience in Europe and US, for which this performance was made, but not experts. A high explosive aviation ammunition, even of lower power, simply would not have left anything from the outer walls of the building. Photographs of the hospital grounds contain evidence of two separate stage explosions near the hospital, buried underground, and another small power directed to the hospital building. The analysis of the statements of reps of Kiev nationalist regime, photographic materials from the hospital leaves no doubt. The alleged airstrike that took place is a completely orchestrated provocation to maintain anti-Russian excitement among Western audiences. We have repeatedly stated earlier that the medical institutions of Mariupol, including the hospital number 3, stopped their full-time work at the end of February. All staff and patients dispersed by nationalists. The hospital building, due to its favorable location, tactical location close to the city center, was converted into a stronghold of the Azov National Battalion. This is massively reported by the residents of the city, who moved both to the controlled Kiev and areas controlled by the Donetsk People's Republic. This is from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Again, and that is a picture of the hospital. Okay, this is the abandoned building photographed last week of where they were training these fighters to fight the Russians. And that is the same maternity hospital.
Today, it's a maternity hospital, fam, because the narrative helps with the Americans' push to make them to demonize all of Russia.
Right. And so so this next one is Dmitry Polinansky. That is how fake news is born. We warned in our statement back on March 7th that the hospital had been turned into a military object by radicals. Very disturbing. The UN spreads this information without verification. Okay. And so the same thing that we just talked about, they're kicking the military or the hospital personnel out, that it was turned into this. And this is what they did with the school before. But you will never see any of that on mainstream media and Western media. And if you do see it, they're like, oh, this is Russian propaganda. This is fake. But where are the bodies? Like, they don't have that information.
And the thing is that you don't have to, you don't even have to debunk your story. Say if they pulled it down, 54, say if they pulled it down, right, fam? Mm-hmm. It still doesn't make a difference because they got their narrative out there and they know this, knowing that it's a lie. immediately, once you get that narrative out there, will be repeated. Oh, you hear Russia bombed the hospital. Oh, you hear Russia bombed the hospital. And then even if you take it down, it's already too late because that lie has become the truth in the mainstream media's eyes and stuff, in the people's mind. They just keep on repeating it. Oh, yeah, Putin's a warmonger. Putin's crazy. Whatnot. You hear he bombed the hospital the other day, a maternity hospital. I mean, these guys went to fucking babies and incubators. How did that turn out? Everybody knew that was a fake story in Kuwait years ago. And now they went back to it. Even Sleepy Josh was laughing about the other day. He goes, they went to babies and incubators. I think Garland Nixon made a tweet. He goes, Russians are taking Ukrainian babies out of incubators and throwing them on the Kuwaiti floor.
He did. And
because that's how obscene this bullshit is.
And it's, again, reminds me of Syria and the faked chemical attacks.
Exactly.
Because this is, once again, what they're doing. So that you can see in this video, Oz, you can go ahead and play it. In this video, there are weapons in the hospital, which why would there be weapons in a hospital unless they're using it?
Доброе утро, нахуй, ебать. Ебать, доброе. Повезло, нахуй, чисто.
So, anyway, so it's just, I could go on and on about how they're just fucking lying. And then this last part right here.
Yeah, I wanted to throw this in. I was trying to find a good place to put this in today's show because I really wanted to talk about it. I said, as a U.S. lawmaker, because this, let me just say, this happened when I had a disagreement with somebody. I was saying, somebody who was running for office said we need to have more anti-war Congress members in the House and the Senate. And I was like, name me one Democrat that's an anti-war person.
Yeah.
Somebody said Barbara Lee. I said, really? And I put up this video from Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee was known as the person, who voted against the AUMF, right? So people look at her as anti-war, but she hasn't been good on a lot of things. She's been awful. Now listen to this here. As a U.S. lawmaker or citizen, the only position you should have on the Russia-Ukraine at this moment is to hold your own government accountable for its role in 2014, the 2014 coup that overthrew Ukraine's democratically elected government. This is a piss poor take from Representative Barbara Lee, fam. And that's the only position you have. This isn't Russia being aggressive. This isn't Russia acting. This is Russia reacting to what happened in 2014. So as a Western citizen or lawmaker, that is who you hold accountable, not Putin. Okay? Not this virtue signal that I'm against war of all kinds on all sides and stuff. I don't want to fucking hear it.
You can't equate it.
I don't want to hear it. This is a reaction from the initial action on their goddamn border. Barbara Lee, terrible take. Here we go.
We are we are 1 week from the State of the Union. The events can overtake any administration. This administration has led. It has led more aggressively than anyone thought it would. It has gathered, analyzed, and declassified intelligence that has proven to be accurate in just about every instance in terms of what Putin would do. I just, having worked in an administration where 9/11 overtook, I just wonder your thoughts and your reflections. Most of our conversations with you are usually about the domestic agenda, and I know that work continues. But what is it like when the country and the world's attention shifts so completely, so dramatically, and so quickly?
Well, I was at the Munich Security Conference with Speaker Pelosi, Nicole, and first of all, the United States, President Biden, Speaker Pelosi, really have led in helping to unify our European allies against what is seen as, and I believe this is a march against democracy. And what Putin wants to do is to remake and reshape the Soviet Union. So it's not going to stop with Ukraine. You have to remember, no democracy is exempt from what Putin's moves are, not even our own country. When you look at misinformation, when you look at disinformation, when you look at what the Russians have done in our overall domestic voting processes here, come on, we have to really be clear that this is about are we going to stand with the democratic forces of the world or Putin, who's trying to establish autocracies and reshaping of the Soviet Union. And so we have to talk about this, and our domestic agenda is very closely aligned with our global agenda, because we have to have global peace and security if, in fact, we're going to maintain our democracy here at home, which, of course, we know is very fragile when you look at what has happened over the last few years with voter nullification, with all of the voting rights issues that the states have unfortunately engaged in to try to roll back participation in terms of our democracy. And so what affects the our European allies and the rest of the world really affects us here at home. So this is really about preserving democracy and not allowing Putin to make his moves to establish autocracies and totalitarian governments around the world.
Fam, that's your leading Democrat.
That's
right?
the leading anti-war Democrat.
Anti-war Democrat right over there.
That's but a shadow of what she once was. I mean, this is just like Bernie Sanders. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is this? Who are you? What the hell? Putin is the authoritarian. Do you know how many military bases? She should know. She knows how many military bases we have.
Yep.
Who's trying to spread? Again, here's the comparison of Putin being like Hitler, like trying to spread, create his own Sudetenland. Instead, they say he's trying to recreate the USSR, which is communism, right? And so they're trying to fearmonger once again the Red Scare, of communism, which works really well for the right, because the right is like, well, we can't allow communism to take over. It's like, no, this isn't communism, and they're equating communism with Nazism because they're comparing Putin, the commie, which he isn't. He's more of a nationalist, okay? And they're comparing him with Hitler, and it's just so perfectly and how many times did you have to say democracy?
Yeah, I like the way she kind of planted that seed, like to kind of implement the whole election things to kind of try to draw that line. Like that's a cryptic way of saying, like, you've seen how many of like our voting rights have been suppressed and whatnot. While she's talking about Putin, wants to kind of keep that line about Putin fixing the elections in 2016. It's disgusting. Like you said, she is a smidget of what she once was. And if that is your most anti-war person in Congress, you're fucked. You have a serious psychopathic
you will not
fucking
vote
government.
Your way out of this, people. Enough with your fucking bullshit, like electoral politics. You cannot vote this out. Look at that. That's supposed to be a good congressperson.
Yep.